And older. I'm going to take a slightly different approach in my response tonight. I just wanted to say hello to you all and thank you very much for attending. I have focused on creating better spaces and places for people in the community. This focus has been across the community, and one of our first council meetings, we were tasked with the allocation of $1 million drought, Commonwealth Government drought funding, and I spoke up at that time to ensure that projects were funded for all communities across the region. I focused on the installation of bollards in front of a cafe to provide pleasant and safe outdoor dining spaces. I focused on the needs of youth and worked alongside Council's youth officer to create better open spaces. I strongly advocated for 2 bicycle activities to be installed in Tarlee and Clare. And on my travels throughout the valleys, usually when I'm on my way to a meeting or on my way home from a meeting in Clare, I've made a habit on every single occasion of driving in and around one of the towns on that trip. I've done that throughout my time as a councillor, and I know that I have nagged the CEO and the staff about potholey roads, dusty roads, boggy roads, weeds, rose gardens, footpaths and other issues. I've acted as a liaison between the community and vice versa. As a councillor, I believe I've made a good effort with communication. After council has approved the annual budget plan every year, I publish articles in a local community newsletter, letting people know what projects will be undertaken throughout the southern part of the region in the following year. I regularly provide a couple of peak bodies with updates on relevant council decisions and any grant opportunities. I regularly forward relevant information to the Riverton Community Facebook site, and my council business cards are available throughout key business sites, mostly in the Riverton area. And during Australia Day, if you're lucky enough to be an attendee, you'll get given one of my business cards as well. So how about that? It's a good reason to attend. I've submitted many. I've got down here 124, but I actually did 2 more last night. So that's 126 work requests to council. That's more than one a fortnight, and I can honestly say that I have followed up with council every issue that a person or a community group has spoken to me about during my time as a councillor. I believe I've been a good strategic thinker for the community. I facilitated the community consultations and development of the Riverton Community Strategic Plan. And throughout the past 4 years, I've hosted the Southern Region Australia Day events, which have all been really well attended, and guests have heard a variety of speakers share their own special Australian story. I believe my career achievements represent the leadership qualities to be an effective councillor. I am a nurse and a midwife. I have a Master's in Public Health and a Doctor of Education. I've lectured in Australian and international universities, and I've also worked for the World Health Organization Safe Motherhood Program in Thailand, Malaysia and China over a 4-year period. I manage the Beyond Blue postnatal depression program for Australia. In that program, we surveyed and interviewed more than 50,000 women across Australia and were able to give them primary health access to mental health services. It was a unique public health program, the first of its nature in the world, and I know that we published significant results from that program. I was a nursing or midwifery advisor for the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia, and also the director of the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council. So I've had some significant work experiences. I do have a long-term professional interest in mental health, and building community wellbeing and resilience is a really important issue for me. And you know, alongside our capacity and ability to respond to the crises that impact on community arising from climate change, for example. I operate in a non-combative and congenial manner with my colleagues. A couple of years ago, I organised a Beyond Blue mental health ambassador who had overcome significant mental health problems to speak at an event which was attended by more than 100 people from across the community. It was a really, really good event. I've been Council's representative on the Lower North Health Advisory Council for the past 2 years, for the last 4 years, and for the last 2 years I've advocated really strongly for funds to be spent on wellbeing projects for hospital staff who've borne the brunt of high workloads during the COVID pandemic. My rationale for this was so that the staff are recognised and know that they're valued for their passion and their loyalty to the communities that they serve. I'm proud of my positive contributions to the Mid-North Community Passenger Network Committee, and I've advocated for mental health issues and am honoured to be a member of the committee that established the Lifeline Clare Connect Centre. I'm also the Deputy Chairperson of the Lifeline Broken Hill Board, which lobbies government for increased mental health funding for the region. So that's what I've been doing in the last 4 years. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that I have presented some good reasons for you to consider voting for my re-election. Please enjoy the rest of the evening, and I do look forward to chatting to you later. Thank you.
CEO, other nominees, and more importantly, members of the public that come out this evening. My name's Brian Cott, and I'm re-nominating for a second term of the Clare-Gilbert Valley Council. On the most southerly points of the council region, our family has run a very successful farming business there, and I just make note, it's 65 kilometres from my house to the Clare council office, so I do get there quite regularly. My son now manages the farm. My wife Carolyn, who's here, we've been married for a few years, 4 children, 10 grandchildren. We've probably come from a family that has been involved in the community over the years. And just for a bit of a list of the CV, I suppose, what I have been involved with in the community, just things like local football club. When I was president there, we got 2 A-grade premierships out of it. I was president of the Hamley Bridge Private Memorial Hospital in Hamley Bridge and while they had a major redevelopment there. As a parent, when you go take your kids to school, you're always in the school governing council, and for many years I was president there. Currently I'm chairman of the Henley Bridge District Senior Citizens Home for about the last 12 years, and also well, it must be over 12 years because Alan was just bringing a few dates up before, for the local Stockport Peak body. Although I'm still learning, I think I've got a fairly good knowledge of the whole council area, whether it's from hill towns of the River Light, Muller's Gap to Salter Springs. I've got around a bit over the years, I suppose, and as I said, I am still learning there. But one of the dilemmas council always comes across is providing services, I suppose, and it's been touched on before. Clare is the major population base of around about half, and the other half is in larger towns as well as the regional communities. And it's very hard to get a fair and even mix of services there. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper to provide services to a large population base. So that's certainly a challenge that council has to address. I mentioned two other committees I've been involved in over recent years, and they both relate to the two most recent disasters that happened in the Clare Gilbert Valley Council. The 2010 flood, Stockport flood, which Alan's mentioned already. I was the chair of the recovery committee of that disaster there. And also the 2015 Pinery Fire, which decimated quite a large area of the southern portion of the area of the council. Council asked me whether I would represent council on the recovery committee, the fire recovery committee, and that actually morphed into, after that, a second flood that Stockport had in 2016. And that was a valuable exercise working with government agencies. As we had the Prime Minister, the Premier in Stockport there one morning there, and you know, great to see him up there. Non-government agencies, all the service groups and all that sort of stuff, how people as a community come together to get over those things like that. And you only got to think of those people in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, what they're going through. Both those committees revolved about recovery. The damage had been done, the relief had been done, but they were about the recovery of the communities. And as has been also mentioned this evening, there's flood mitigation plans for major towns in the area, which are coming to well over $10 million. Now, my experience in these committees showed that there has to be preparedness in communities as well. We can be complacent about our communities, and it's only after a disaster happens and think, gee, if I would have done that last year and cleaned that up, it wouldn't have happened. So if I get re-elected as councillor, I will not be supporting these grandiose schemes of flood mitigation until there's been clean-up and work done on stormwater and flood rivers and stuff like that beforehand. Fine if it's going to be after that, but I think we have to be accountable for our communities at that level to make sure that we are ready and able to prepare, get those things. Right, now, better follow me. As a council, we need to update our lists for renewal and repairs of assets. And we call them our asset management plan. Besides other assets, there's institutes and other things like that which have been mentioned, much of it is spent on roads, footpaths and bridges. And they vary quite markedly from year to year and generation to generation what is actually needed. And I've raised that at a couple of council meetings in a very informal manner. And as I've said, I'm a regional farmer who relies a lot on infrastructure to get around, like we all do. Even if you're living in a town, you want to get to another town, you need good roads. And I can see you're all saying, yeah, there's a few potholes around, isn't there? And they're going to be a lot worse in a few years' time. And I just want to finish by just reflecting on what has happened over the years. Over 50 years ago, Mr. Smith owned a farm, and he owned about 800 acres. And his back paddock was only about 2 miles up the road. That's all he had to drive to his back paddock. And he ran sheep and crop. That's what he did. Most of his excess sheep he took down to the local sale. Dalgetty's, I think, were running it there, sold his excess sheep there. And he was very proud of his 8-tonne Bedford truck. And he carted all his grain to the local silo, just down the road. Where was that? Right next to the main railway corridor, right in the middle of town, and all that grain just went straight down the railway corridor down to Port Adelaide. His children went to the local school. It was only a few miles down the road. The Joneses lived down the road and they used to share rides to school. It wasn't, again, great drama. When the children went to their high school, they just had to go down to the corner, down to the 5-way corner, catch the bus. And by the time it got to the local high school, that bus was chock-a-block full. All those kids were going down there. Come 50 years' time, what's happened? The son runs the farm now. And they own about 1,500 hectares now. And they've purchased everywhere, and one of the blocks is actually 30 kilometres away from their home. And they're quite open to saying, well, if we're going to expand again, we might have to travel even further. No sheep, they're well and truly out. All crop. And Mr. Smith's son is actually getting twice the yields than what he used to get years ago, 50 years ago. And the son keeps on telling Mr. Smith he knows nothing about farming. You might think some of this is real and some of it's fiction, but some of it is real. They own some pretty big machinery. Look it out in the paddock. It's thumping machinery. Put it on the road and it's narrower than what Mr. Smith used to do with his 28-row combine and his PDO header that he used to drag around. But it's a lot higher, and he's really struggling to access some of his property with the preferred route that he wants to go. He's getting contractors in to do his carting or his grain. Big B doubles, road trains. Where are they going? They're going to Bowman's or Roseworthy or Port Adelaide, going crisscross everywhere. And these B doubles and road trains are trying to access his farm. Somebody mentioned climate change before. A lot more frost, so he's doing a lot more hay. Where's this hay going to? It's going to the big hay exporters. Bowman's, Kapunda, Balaclava. He hasn't got any children. They call them kids now. You don't have children, you have kids now. The local school's shut. The closest school had some pretty poor NAPLAN results. So they're quite happy to cart their kids 20 minutes every morning to and fro school twice a day to their preferred school. Mr. Smith's grandkids want to go to a private high school. It's even outside the local the council area. To catch a bus, their preferred route is by an unmaintained road, impassable after 20 mils of rain, even with a Toyota Land Cruiser. And you might think, yep, that's society. The transport network Mr. Smith used is now outdated. The mode of transport and direction of transport has changed. Many Category 2 roads are relatively unused, and others are getting just belted away with all the use they get. My idea would be that we don't need a consultant or an outside expert to actually work these things out, but we have community can have input to get a transport system that they want. There'll be a cost in that, but I think the savings to the asset management plan might even cover that. Just aside from that, in finishing, I think I have a good working relationship with administration. They might think differently. I hope I vote on the intent of motions and policy in the council chamber. There are others that actually cover the details, so I more or less put my effort into the intent of the motion and policy. 4 years ago at Auburn, I said I wasn't on Facebook, and everybody looked at me as a freak of nature. I'm still not on Facebook, and I won't be in 4 years' time. But I'm accessible on a mobile phone anytime you want to ring me. And that's quite an easy phone number through on the council website. So thank you very much for your listening, and I hope that you'll have your support in the forthcoming election.
I was newly elected mid-term last year, so I've only been on council 18 months. I was asked to go on, and I initially said no, and then I thought I can't really come up with a good enough reason to validly say no. So I put my hand up, and I was fortunate enough to get in, and the last 18 months has been a giant learning curve. I'm still a novice. But what I have found in council, if you're going to go on to it, you need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to listen. And as Councillor Koff just said, you've got to vote on the intent as well. You can go into the chamber, and I've had my thought process going that way, with a personal preference of how something should go. And then you listen to the other councillors, and you listen to the arguments and the reasons put forth, and I voted opposite to what I thought I would. And I think that's a characteristic that you need to have if you're going to go into the council. A little bit of my background. My parents were the vets in Clare Valley. Many of you know old Dick and Doc from many years ago. They were the first vets at north of Gawler back when they came, and I rode to Clare in my mother's womb. And I've been there ever since. My mother's womb was my first journey to Clare. I don't remember it, except for the rough roads, and I was born thereafter, shortly thereafter, due to the roads. The Horrocks Highway hasn't changed since. I was sent off to college. My resume didn't read really well at college. I was accused of spending more time getting out of my academic work than actually doing it. So most of my life has been hands-on experience gaining things. Having set that up, got out of college, I went away and did wool classing, and then I drove trucks for a little while with Heinrichs and started earth moving with them, and then I eventually set up the first bobcat that ever hit the Clare Valley, and I was actually a contractor for the Clare Valley Council many, many years ago, and that made me the grave digger. So be warned, multi-skilled. I got out of the excavation business, and I brought my wool experience back up, and I bought a wool buying business, and I became a private wool buyer, dealt with many, many, many farmers from Port Augusta through to the bottom of York Peninsula and Waikerie and the Riverland, etc. I had Wilson Wool, and I did that for many years. And then I burnt out of that, and I got into tourism, and that's where I still lay with tourism. Clare Valley is one part of the area we live in. Rivet, Saddleworth, Tarlee, Stockport. We don't get down to Stockport much with the tourism game, but we do cover a lot of other areas, and it's been touched on tonight about how beautiful a piece of country we do live in. Through tourism, there's the Australian Tourism Exchange. I've been all over the country selling Clare Valley as an independent operator. For me to get a job as a tour operator, I can't sell a tour without selling my region and the attributes of it. So that's what we do, and it's quite interesting. When I went into the tourism, we think we know our district, we think we know our people, and we think we know our livestock, but we don't. There's a wonderful saying I employ now is, we look but we don't see. And when we actually travel around with visitors and we point things out, we get more and more things to look at, and we get prouder and prouder. And I've learnt the history of our Clare Valley, and I talk about that a lot. I love living here, I love talking about it, and I love selling it. One thing I'd like to do with council now is to see all of the bodies involved with tourism come together and unite CBBTA, Winemakers Association, Main Street Traders. If they're each spending $30,000 or $40,000 on advertising, it's insignificant and it's useless. It doesn't go anywhere. But if 4 bodies can come together and spend $120,000, $150,000 selling destination, and then that destination is not Clare Valley, it's the greater region as well. We've got Auburn as the gateway. So we've got a plan to upgrade Auburn Main Street now. It's our front door. Riverton, Shoals Park, Alfie. So many things to sell. We come back to, we look, but we don't see. And when we actually start looking around further, we see what we actually have got. We take more pride in it and we start selling it. And that collective thought process then goes on and on and on, and we build as a collective. I'd like to see more and more of that happening. Hopefully we will, excuse me. There's been much talk when I first went into council about the north-south divide. Yeah, it's there, it's real. I live in the north, and some of you live in the middle, and some live in the south. But that doesn't mean we're not one council. And I think when councillors come together in that chamber and you can have a rigorous debate, spirited debate, and still sit down and treat each other with respect and dignity afterwards and talk about different issues. And sometimes the answer is after the meeting or before a meeting with those little individual talks and the respect for each other's thought processes. That's when that north-south disappears and we start voting again as one body, as an entity. And the north-south just doesn't have to be there, and I don't believe it is. I saw a little bit of it in the chamber when I first went in. I think it's going. So it's a good thought process to have in, but we've also got to have evenness from all of the districts to come in. We have to have that voice and we have to be heard on each and every front, and I think it's very, very important. And I think with a good councillor and that communication coming from that community, things will go well, go greater at it. Listen, vote for the motion, not on personal preference. That's about all I've got to say. I did listen to Carolyn Schaefer, the lovely Carolyn. I have seen her put a hand on hips and frown before, and I'd like to offer another few minutes to question time. Thank you.
Mayor, CEO, fellow council candidates, ladies and gentlemen. To me, local government is a team game. We have 9 councillors, so to get anything through, there needs to be at least 5 people in favour. That means that this community needs to elect a group of councillors that will work as a team to achieve good outcomes for our community. So there's no place for people with a single issue outlook, in my view. Administration is also part of the team, and via their reports and recommendations have a big influence on what happens in our council area. However, we need councillors that will not just rubber stamp what administration puts up. We need councillors who will readily adopt what is of quality, but also be prepared to enhance and improve what has been put before the chamber, and where necessary, reject what administration might be suggesting. In a council like ours, we need enough members who understand the rural sector. It's our biggest land area and where by far the largest percentage of rates are collected. We cannot expect administration or those who have never been involved in agriculture to fully understand this significant sector of our economy. So we need people in our elected team that can help fill that gap. Equally, we need councillors who understand the issues of living in an urban environment and be fully aware of issues as mundane as rubbish collection and CWMS schemes. So it is important that the team elected has a good solid base of rural-based councillors who can help represent the rural issues, as well as councillors who are able to relate to issues faced by our town and village based residents. So I'm one of those rural-based candidates, and so understand the issues of unsealed roads and remoteness to the bulk of council services. I've been involved in farming all my life, but I've also spent periods of time involved in the family commercial business in the main street of Clare. I've been involved in the running of one of our iconic Clare Valley hotels. With my wife, I've been involved in tourism and accommodation at the grassroots level, as well as serving time on the various committees and so on. I've also been involved in the wine industry as another part of our economy. Outside of Clare, I've had employment that's taken me to live in cities in South Australia, basically Adelaide, but also cities in Victoria, New South Wales and New Zealand. I say that because I have lived in urban environments. I do understand, as well as the rural stuff, I understand the weekly cycle of rubbish and recycling collections and understand the costs associated with effluent disposal and so on. So I've experienced those things firsthand as well. So it's that diverse experience that I called on when joining forces with a couple of other councillors to present to council and administration a package to help businesses that were caught at the coalface of the COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions, primarily our hospitality sector. Now that required a team effort. Everyone on council had to then get involved to get that package in place. And then we needed a competent administration to be able to swing into gear and implement the strategy approved by elected members. And I think that was one of our finest moments in terms of the way administration grabbed that, and within a couple of days had rolled it out, and it really did help the people and the sports groups that needed it at that time. Moving forward, if elected, I'm very interested in the proposal for a new community-based facility in Riverton and how that might be funded, but without putting pressure on ratepayers. During the life of the last council, we were able to fund two similar projects, namely the Clare Oval redevelopment and the new centre at Watervale. Now, the Clare Oval was funded from proceeds that were held in reserve from the original sale of the Clare Caravan Park. And when that was combined with grants that the sports groups were successful in obtaining, the project has commenced with little impact to any ratepayer. In the case of the Watervale Centre, elected members were presented with a choice. Ask the Watervale community to seek further grants to make up what was then the $150,000 shortfall, or fund it from rates. As a team, elected members chose to take no risks and allocated additional ratepayer funds rather than run the risk of a final grant not being successful and therefore having earlier grants expire and cancel the project. The idea that some have for Riverton should be worked up into a solid proposal, and as a councillor, if I'm elected, I'd certainly be willing to help in that process, so that, as was with the case in Watervale and Clare, grant funding might be coupled with potentially recycling capital from council or community assets, with support from general ratepayers if needed, to get the project over the line, if that is what the community decide they need. My vision for the Clare and Gilbert Valleys is one of growth. Growth in our region, it's non-negotiable. Growth in our region needs to outpace growth in other regions, or we lose services over time, included but not limited to medical, emergency, education and retail services. It's particularly important for Clare as a key regional centre, but our larger communities in Auburn, Saddleworth and Riverton also need to be able to maintain a level of growth that ensures that no more services are lost from those communities as well. I'm also interested in our rating system, and council is partway through a review of our rates. There needs to be equity or fairness from whom rates are collected and to whom services are delivered. And at the moment our system is stretched, and we've heard tonight it's going to get stretched even further because of the competitiveness of getting grants from the other two levels of government. As a team, elected members and administration need to work together to ensure the correct outcomes across our whole council region. There is no room for factions or the north and south divide, which seems to prevail in parts of our council region. No place for it. The work needs to be coordinated and done in a way for everyone's benefit. These are some of the issues confronting elected members, and so, as I said, we need to elect a team of councillors who have the breadth of expertise and experience to set the policies for fair and equitable outcomes for everyone. As part of my CV, I can say that I've been on council for one term now. I had the privilege of being elected Deputy Mayor for the last 2 years. At an academic level, I'm an economist as well as an agriculturalist, and I hold degrees in a Master's degree of Economics and a Master's of Business Administration. But I think the points have been really well made, and I made them in my speech 4 years ago, and Councillor Coffers talked about it again tonight. The changes in the way our key industry, agriculture, operates has changed dramatically over the last 20 or 30 years, and the amount of produce that moves and the direction in which that produce moves is quite dramatically different. And I'm not sure that any of our governments at any level have kept up with those changes, and it is certainly one of the issues which I think this council is dealing with, and I want to be part of the process of continuing to deal with it, particularly via the development of an ongoing improvement of our asset management plans. Thank you.
Gilbert Valleys Council, firstly, for being on my patch. Advantage? Not sure. Thanks everyone for coming this evening and for listening to us all. They've all been a hard act to follow, all the first lot of speakers, and I do not intend to speak for 10 minutes because I cannot do that. I am a long-term resident of Saddleworth. Well, 22 years, I guess, is long for some. I've got 2 children, one's 17, attends Clare High School, and I'm very proud to say this year's valedictorian. I have a 14-year-old who attends Riverton High School, so we're at both ends of the Valleys Council, which is great. And my husband Ben is a trainer and assessor down in Adelaide. He's also a musician, if anyone's looking for a band. I'm nobody special. I live quietly and comfortably here. I love my friends and my family. I love this community. I've gotten to know a lot of people over the years through my involvement with many of the community groups. When the peak bodies were first reignited in 2002, I was one of the first members then. Being new to town, it's good to get involved and meet people. I have also been coordinator of our local play group here. I was on the governing council for the primary school from reception right through to year 7. And then I'm back on the peak body, thanks to the invitation of a few good people on that committee. I've also been involved in the RSMU Footy and Netball Club. Both my girls have played. I've coached. I've done everything. I've volunteered right through that club, and it's a great club to be part of. My reason for being on the council, it's been about 10 years in the thinking process. My children were too young first time I thought about it, and I wanted to dedicate time to my family. So I've done that. They're now older, more independent, and don't need me as much, or so they like to think. But I have time now to dedicate more time to the community. And I think council is not just council, and community is not just community. We're all one. the Clare and Gilbert Valleys Council represents the community. They have people who work on the community and are paid to be on that council for our benefit. The community members are councillors, potential mayors, like I said, workers. So we are all one. Reminds me of a song. And I think that we need to learn to operate side by side, not in opposition. And everyone's been talking about that this evening, and if we don't do it, then what's the point in having a council? What's the point in having community groups? You know, we need to work together. We need to work hard and we need to be dedicated. Our future is at stake, our children's future is at stake if we work in opposition. I also think, being on the peak body, and a few members here tonight might frown at me about this, I think peak bodies should be more instrumental in the work of the council. I think the council and peak bodies could be more of a combined force. With the whole new bin issue that's come to play, I think is a fantastic thing, and I'm all for it. And I'm happy to educate people on, how to manage your bins in workshops, which is what I think the council could approach peak bodies to do. You know, we have workshops at the meetings, rather than Facebook and letterbox drops, we have actual face-to-face, one-on-one sessions with people. Bring your bin along and we'll show you how to reduce your waste. Why not? I think it's a great proactive thing to do. And it might just encourage more people to get involved in that sort of thing. I'm a very keen future planner. I am a human resources and work health safety advisor for the Northern and York Landscape Board. Yes, Caroline's my boss. And I think one of the key things that we need to focus on is planning for our future. So we need to work and support our small towns, not just Saddleworth, Auburn and Riverton. There's Tarlee, there's Stockport, there's Waterloo, there's Marrable, there's tiny little towns that don't get mentioned very often. And they're the ones we can focus on. They've all got massive attributes. They're beautiful towns, they have beautiful people, they have small businesses popping up everywhere, and we could strengthen them and get them to progress more and encourage tourism to their areas, bring in new residents and new business. We have so much more to offer than wine. And I drink wine. I think also our future planning means having more people stand for council. We've got 10 people running for councillors, and we have 3 very interesting mayor candidates. And now I'm not sure who I'm going to vote for. And I just think, I was looking back at on the electoral website at the 2018 election. We had 6,600 eligible voters in this region, and out of that, in 2018, we had 2,900 votes. It's not very many. Where are the rest of them? Why aren't they voting? We need to get to the core of that and encourage more to vote. And we can do that because you know people who are wanting to be on the council. And if you don't know someone, you can go and ask someone else who does know them. And so you can make an informed choice. Local voting actually does make a change. And that's one thing that if I become a councillor, that I want to encourage more people to do. I want young people to vote because that's one of the biggest gaps. The 18 to 25-year-olds are lacking in the knowledge, perhaps, or the awareness of what their vote actually means. I also want to encourage more women to vote, to participate as candidates as well, because the majority of candidates has been males over the last 2 elections. So I think that needs to, and I haven't even started on cultural diversity. Yeah, I think that's it. Look, I'm not going to promise. I don't make promises, except that I will do my very best. I will work for you, I'll work by you, and I'll work with you. I can pretty much guarantee that we won't agree on everything, but my word is always true. I'm honest, and I want to make sure that we do the right thing. So vote local, because it does make a difference. Thank you.
I didn't need these 6 years ago. Good evening, everyone. I hope you bear with me. One of my biggest fears is actually public speaking, so I'm not really here for me, I'm here for you. My main reason to want to continue on the Clare and Gilbert Valleys Council as a councillor is I truly love the area and what it has to offer, and I want to see it grow and prosper for the good of all of us. I grew up on our family farm at Manura, and being the youngest of 8 kids, basic life lessons were instilled in me very early. Like respect others, be fair, kind, caring and honest. And also the only way to get a positive outcome was to work together. These traits I still carry today. When I was in my late teens, I did live and work in Adelaide for a very short time, but that just made me realise this area is my home. My wife and family have lived in Auburn for the past 35 years. For the past 8 years, I've worked on our farm, and prior to that, I managed a local agricultural business, Manura Seeds. So, yeah, Muriel Anson was my first boss and mentor. I managed that for about 25 years, so gained much experience in customer service, HR, finances, budgeting and forward planning. As we all do in these communities, I have stood on many school, sporting, community and business committees. Having lived and worked in this council region for the majority of my life, I've gained a lot of knowledge of the area and the diverse communities within it. As previous speakers have already mentioned, I too agree with the need to maintain and improve council infrastructure and services, and also to understand community needs not only now but into the future. Through my past work experiences, I think I can make a positive contribution to council as it reviews and sets budgets and plans in our ever-changing world. COVID was mentioned before, and I'll just bring it up. One positive COVID has brought to this region is increased tourism and development. So it's quite exciting for me to think about what council can do to help keep this momentum going in these sectors. I believe as a councillor, it is my role to continue to strengthen communication and consultation between council and the community. And as it's been said before, and I've said, the only way to get a positive outcome is to work together. Having been a councillor for the past 6 years, I still have the time and passion to commit to serving the ratepayers and act in your best interests. I feel through my life and work experiences, I have a lot to offer by listening and being a voice for all ratepayers, residents, organisations and businesses as we all strive to grow and improve our region. And just in closing, so we will have more time for questions. As this whole council community gave me and my family so much care and support when we needed it, now's my time to give back and serve your needs. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, thanks for showing up, and more importantly, for sticking around. I'm going to keep this very short and sharp. Benefit being last, as everyone's already said, what we're all here to do. We're all here for the same job, for the same purpose, for the same reason, to serve the community. So that said, I want to tell you, how did I end up here? 2010, I got blown up. I was Royal Australian Engineer in the Australian Army, serving in Afghanistan, and got shot at every day, rockets every day, RPGs every day. They got me one day. I got thrown out of the back of a 15-ton vehicle out onto the bowling green, about that distance. Got hurt, had to leave the military. Through DVA, I ended up on a return to work program. Luckily, Leanne down here, actually the first one to employ me out of defence. Didn't last long. I was there part-time, I ended up a full-time gig down at Playford working in governance. That's where I've been for the past 7 years, working down there. Start of May this year, moved out to Barossa. So back out in the regional areas now. Moved to Riverton, Struth, just before the last elections, about 4 or 5 years ago now. Met my wife, moved in there, now 3 lovely kids, one's about to start preschool, one in primary school, one in high school. So I've got a young growing family living in the area. My goal, with my young age still and the experience of working in a council, is just to improve the area. I'm hearing from residents all around the area, from different community groups, sporting clubs, functions and events. They want someone who actually works in the industry, knows the industry, is young, and is able to communicate with them. And yeah, short, sharp and sweet, that's pretty much it. That's why I'm here.
I'd like to apologise for not being here in person tonight, but I have a post-viral cough which makes it very difficult to speak for a length of time. Thank you for reading this for me. My name is Elizabeth Calvert. I've lived in Manoora for over 20 years. After senior marketing and business development roles with major organisations such as Lincraft and the Transport Accident Commission and other major Australian companies, I took up teaching in the Faculty of Business at NMIT in Melbourne, now Melbourne Polytechnic. I taught business development, marketing, advertising, project management and e-business subjects and started up an e-business and e-learning consultancy. I still operate my consultancy. I am a committed community member and have volunteered with many local organisations, including being a Justice of the Peace. I have the privilege of having served 4 terms on council and thoroughly enjoyed working with all our communities. The Clare and Gilbert Valleys region is an amazing place to live and work, but there are still challenges. For example, we have a shortage of skilled staff in a number of sectors, but to attract them to our area, we need to facilitate development of available and affordable housing. I'm standing as a councillor again because I want to continue working with the residents and organisations of the Clare and Gilbert Valleys Council District, and am particularly keen to see some of our recent council projects come to fruition, including planned improvements to our infrastructure. Because of my experience and various roles on council over several terms, I can contribute immediately to any decision making in an informed and community focused way. My experience has included serving as Deputy Mayor and on a number of regional local government aligned committees as our local representative. In my opinion, a committed councillor needs to listen to their community. We work on behalf of our electors, and it is important to listen, take appropriate action and measure our decision making so that everyone in our region benefits. I believe that councillors need to be well prepared and well informed prior to attending and deliberating on decisions at council meetings, and that includes attending any and all workshops where councillors receive briefings on issues upon which they will have to make decisions at a future council meeting. My attendance record speaks for itself. My wish list, if re-elected, is to facilitate and hold local communities to achieve the best outcome for their residents through support from council. Council decisions are made through a democratic process, so every positive decision is shared by all councillors of the day. In the past, I have been proud to see the completion of the Gleeson Wetlands, the Rattler Trail, changes to our stormwater management, the development of the Short Walks program, and the equitable distribution of approximately $2 million drought funding to our communities. It's not only big projects that matter. I have always made myself available to discuss residents' issues and concerns, because what can seem a small concern to some may have a big impact on the individual's life. Working with council administration in a collaborative way, can bring timely positive outcomes. For example, I received a phone this week from an Auburn resident who lives on a no-through road that leads down to the Hutt River walking path. People who are not familiar with the road have driven down it on numerous occasions, and twice, when a driver has realised that they couldn't get further, they have reversed their car and knocked down one of the brick pillars in the start of the resident's driveway, leaving him with a bill of $600. Solution? A chat with council's administration to get a very noticeable no-through road sign installed at the top of the road. I'm confident that this will be done in the next few weeks. I look forward to having the opportunity to continue listening and working with all communities in the district to achieve their best outcomes. I also look forward to being able to support business growth, which will add to the vibrancy of our region. Lastly, why should you vote for me? Because I listen. I'm always available to discuss matters of concern with ratepayers and residents and seek solutions. And that's the end of that.
I'd like to ask a question of Owen. Owen, I'm a fellow golfer. Firstly, thank you for standing, and thank you for your service to our country. I'm a fellow golfer, and some of my friends would think that automatically qualifies you to be a counsellor. But seriously, you mentioned in your bio about a no-nonsense decision-making style. Does that come from your army background? And if so, could you help me understand what a no-nonsense decision-making style looks like and sounds like?
Basically, I just don't like the guff. There's no need to red tape. There's no need to make things harder than what it is. If you've got a decision in front of you, you consider the evidence, you make a decision. No need to waffle on and drag it out any longer than it has to be done. Make a decision. Is that an answer satisfactorily? Yep. Nice.
Thank you. Further questions?
I actually had a question for all the candidates, and
Yeah.
I actually gave them
I think it looks like we've got time for that, so that's fine.
Time for that. If I can read that, just to the candidates. Sorry, thank you. In 1992, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio de Janeiro. It was recognised at this conference that many of the issues for global sustainability was best addressed at local level. It developed into something that was termed Local Agenda 21, which was kind of applied a little bit around the area. Whyalla, Yankalilla, and one or two other councils took this up. In 1997, another major international conference, Pathways to Sustainability, was held in Newcastle, Australia. This conference further endorsed the need for action at the local level, acknowledging sustainability is a global necessity. It was called the Newcastle Declaration. The biggest and immediate threat to sustainability at both local and global levels has already been mentioned, that of climate change due to anthropogenic-induced global warming. In her book, Humanity's Moment, Joel Gurgis, an Australian climate scientist working with the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, you probably know it better as the IPCC, writes, the most important insight that she says she learned was that people alive today will determine humanity's future. She says, stop for a moment and let that sink in. Averting planetary disaster is up to us. Our local government is our local level, and we are the people who are alive today. What I'd like our candidates to say, can they explain how they believe that they can assist Clare and Gilbert Valley councils and the community, not just to mitigate the effects of climate change, but also to actively reduce carbon emissions and so determine a better future for humanity. Thank you.
That's a very deep question, and so I'm not going to ask every councillor. Of course, every councillor can answer it if they wish, but I'm going to ask for a volunteer for a start, please. Helen and David and Malcolm and Anne. Oh, what? The gang's all here.
Thanks, Caroline. It's Patsy, is it? Patsy, thanks very much for the question and the opportunity to address it tonight. In 10 minutes we can't cover all the issues. I'm very aware that I didn't cover much to do with heritage and nothing to do with environment. I do have a website and it's helenperryformayor.com, not hard to remember. And on it there's pages dedicated to these subjects. I also responded to the Climate Connect group, the local one, based at Watervale, and I responded to their online questionnaire, and all my answers to those questions are on my website as well as on their website and Facebook. I've got 8 grandchildren, and all of them can expect to very well pass the year 2100 or 2100. So this is an issue very close to my heart. We need to think about what sort of world our grandchildren are going to be living in 50 to 100 years' time. How hot it's going to be, we're all aware of how hotter it's getting. Some of my grandkids live in Alice Springs, and their parents have said to me, we're not sure how long we can stay here. It's actually getting too hot to live here. I read a lot of future novels, and I find it scary that they talk about things in a science fiction way, and if they're written a few 20, 30 years ago, the things they're saying as fiction are actually happening. You know, it's very, very confronting. One way as a council that we can address this is making sure that we're very thoroughly populating our area with trees and making sure there are trees available. I know currently there are no trees available in the council resources. This is because the Hope Street residents have approached council for trees. Perhaps we need to have a council nursery so that we've always got a stock available, and for the people who haven't got room to plant them, there can be community organised efforts where people can go out and plant areas where there is space. That's just one very small way. We can also look at ways our vehicles are operating and what fuels they're using, and making sure that our council fleet is efficient. But these are small ways of addressing it, and it's a much bigger issue than that. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Go to order of people who okay.
No,
I was up there as well, so.
Just someone.
I like to find out this is how we act in the
Hey.
No, you go.
Okay. Okay.
I will ask you to keep the replies recent.
Okay, I think I can do it fairly short. I think one thing to remember is the council's economy is about 1.6% of the national economy. So basically, what we do is of the leadership role, where the big effect is out there, out in the countryside. And I can quickly say, just on our personal farm, we've done a carpet audit and find we're pretty close to neutral. Won't take much to do for us personally. When you say the first conference was 1992, my son was born in that same year. And a couple of years later, been actively looking at into how to put carbon back into soil. That's been a natural part of farming for a long, long time. The capacity for this district to be carbon neutral isn't that far away. So I think this district can, and you look just in terms of the wind farms and so forth, we're well on the way. So our capacity is pretty good. And it is more on getting the whole of the thing. As I said, council is only that part of the economy. You look at 1,800 square kilometres of council area, that's where we can put carbon into the soft soils. Okay?
Malcolm?
Yes, thank you for the question. And I have spent a fair bit of time liaising with other people that have asked the question directly. I don't want to get involved in the arguments as to whether climate change is happening or not, or whether it's caused by man. Let's just accept that that's the way it's going. Our governments have accepted that. We've got a national climate disaster, a climate emergency, I think, has been declared by our state government. We've got state government targets, we've got federal government targets on carbon reductions, and this council needs to get lockstep in with those targets and do our share. Equally though, I don't want to be told that what we do in Australia will stop fires and droughts and floods in Australia. It's going to be what happens in China, in Africa, in Europe, and in the US and India, which is actually going to impact our climate. Doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't do anything. Of course we should, and we're a wealthy country, so we should be at the lead of it. As a farmer, I'm at the coalface of climate change, and we are dealing with the changes in our weather patterns over the last 40 years. Are they caused by climate change? I don't know, but we do know that our systems are changing and that we have to adapt. In terms of what council can do, and I don't know why it hasn't been done. I do not know why this has not been done. Why haven't we got areas that are zoned already that are suitable for wind farms? Areas that are zoned already that are suitable for solar farms? So that if someone puts up their hand to build one and we can direct them to these areas that are already zoned, it should be able to proceed fairly quickly. In terms of EV chargers, we're going to have electric vehicles. They will work. We just have to decarbonise our economy, and electric vehicles, whether we like them or not, are going to be a part of that. And I've been asking, as have a couple of other councillors, about electric vehicle chargers. I don't want to be told that it's not the local council's job. We can take a leadership role in providing EV chargers. And in terms of what council could be doing with its fleet, I think our passenger car fleet should all become electric vehicles as soon as we can, and put charging stations in the car park at the council area to do that. You can get tradies utes now that are EV vehicles. Maybe we should try a couple of them as well.
Anne?
My response is going to be very brief. I'm not an environmental scientist, and I have a very apprenticeship approach about climate change, etc. So I don't have broad knowledge base in those areas. My strength is about community well-being and mental health, and I mentioned that before about the importance of building a community's resilience to change and disasters. So that's the answer that I can offer you, Patsy. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, thank you, Patsy. Much of what I wanted to say has been already iterated by the others. Climate change it's such a contentious issue, and where does it start in the local community and what can we do with it? I would suggest most of us in this room are greenies in one way, shape or form in how we live, whether it be farming, planting trees, parks, gardens, etc. We're basically greenies. I believe at a local level, it's already started. It's in the education system where they're taught more sustainable activities on how to go about it. I think there also needs to be an educational process to shy away from a throwaway market where everything, it's got 2 years of life and then it costs more to fix it than, it costs more to repair it and buy a new one. It's just absolutely stupid. I think we need to step right away from that. Getting into the argument of climate change, it's a dangerous argument because the science is changing all the time. We look at the last 4 years, they've been very, very dry. And then we look at Clare Show this year and it's still dry enough that we didn't have to have a tractor there pulling people out getting bogged, because that's what it was like when I was a kid. People talked about how harvest has come forward a month in viticulture just a short while ago, and they said that this is a very unusual year because it's a month late. So what becomes the new normal? It was normal to have vintage at this time of year 20 years ago. So everything's on a cycle, but I think we need to look at it in a balance. I don't think it needs to be, and this is probably contentious for you, Patsy, I don't think it needs to be at the detriment of a council and community to lead in such a way that it's disadvantageous to a council financially. I think we need to lead by example, yes, but we've also got to be fiscally responsible on how we go forward with it.
Thank you. And Brian?
Thank you for your question. I'll probably look at it in a different tack. Some of you are about my age, some are a little bit older, and there's quite a few young ones in here, but we've all seen the expansion of the world's population, and it's just growing, and I can't quote figures or anything like that, but it's huge, and it's a bit like the ant nest. There's a lot of ants in the nest there now, and you look what climate change has done, there's a lot of doomsayers, but the reality is that the world is actually producing more food and fibres for that population as the population's expanded. We look at what can we do on a local level, then you look at the other end then where you've got probably a third of the world's population isn't going to meet peak carbon production for another decade or so. And here we are looking at our local level, which is very important to us and we are very concerned about it. But what do we do for that peak carbon that's going to go in those other two countries? You look at what do we do? We're an affluent country. We've got money to spare. Most of us have. What do? We go and offshoot our manufacturing overseas where the cheap labour is. And what are they doing? They're importing our coal and iron to make us feel good that we're not producing carbon here, but they are over there, and then we employ all that stuff back here. And I know it's probably not the answer to the question you want, but are we responsible for the heat waves in Europe? Are we responsible for the floods in Victoria? I think as a world we've got to look at it, but I think personally we are aware of the issue, what we actually do to go forward. We've got targets in place. As a farmer, we're going to now hopefully not have a fart tax on our sheep and cattle, but that's what New Zealanders have got now, haven't they? I see it as a bigger picture. We can be very proactive at a local level, but what does the world do?